The Where Our Minds Wander podcast may contain sensitive content and explicit language. Listener discretion is advised. Greetings, fellow wanderers, to the places our minds wander.
The house at the end of the dirt road, where disembodied voices whisper and strange sounds make the living shiver.
Where shadows lurk at the edge of the woods, just outside your back door. And mysterious lights speed beyond reason across the clear night sky.
Odd events throughout time that lead you down the rabbit hole.
I'm Wes.
And I'm Beth.
And this is Where Our Minds Wander. Hello and welcome to Where Our Minds Wander, all you fellow wanderers. Thank you for joining us.
Hello, everybody. Well, things today, I guess, officially went back to normal because I went back to work today. So, definitely on the mend, although my middle finger is still turning odd colors every once in a while. But I think, things are getting better.
Is that what you were doing? You're showing your middle finger to me to show that it's getting normal, or were you giving me the middle finger?
Well, it depends. I mean, if you're seeing the back of my hand, it's in response to something obnoxious that you've said. But, if I'm holding my hand out to you and pointing out my totally white or alternately purple finger, then I'm just showing you my hand.
That could come in handy for colleagues that you don't really care for. When they ask you how your finger's doing, just raise up your middle finger at them to show them.
And say, what do you think?
Yeah. What do you think about that? That could work. You could use this to your advantage.
Yeah,
even
maybe.
After it's not turning blue anymore. But the blood thinners do seem to be helping. It hasn't gotten any worse.
Right.
So that's a good thing.
Yes.
So hopefully over the next couple months, this will dissolve on its own.
Yes. That would be great, because I don't exactly want to be on blood thinners for an extended period of time, because there's things I can't eat.
You can't drink.
I can't drink. I can't have garlic, which is, we use a lot of garlic in our cooking, and garlic powders in pretty much everything that I eat.
Yeah, we use garlic in pretty much every dish that we cook.
I know. I'm sure, again, my colleagues are probably happy that I'm not ingesting as much garlic.
Well, it hasn't gotten to the point that you're sweating garlic out your pores, or I'd put an end to it.
Right.
I don't want that.
Well, you're the one that does all the cooking, so that would, you'd have to just stop, which we pretty much have. So.
Yeah, I've been pretty good about your dietary restrictions. It's kind of bland for me, but hey, just have to suck it up and go with the flow for now.
Yeah. So we also did some Christmas decorating, kind of early for us. We actually did it before Thanksgiving, but we used to have two kind of narrow Christmas trees that fit in the two alcoves in our living room, and they were decorated all in vintage style ornaments. And this year we decided to go big. Not as big as we ended up going, but we bought a huge Christmas tree that we didn't realize just quite how large it was until we started putting it together.
Yeah, it's massive. It's 7.5 feet tall. And I was surprised when we put the tree topper on it. It barely touches the ceiling. But it holds the tree topper up nice and straight. So that's a bonus, right?
That's a plus, too.
And we've got all our vintage bulbs on it. Plus, we have all our Bigfoot ornaments on it. And our vintage Halloween
ornaments on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an eclectic tree for sure.
It's pretty cool.
It is pretty cool.
Well, that's what Christmas is all about, right?
Yeah. So as soon as it starts to get dark, I flip the tree lights on and I go in there and I sit and I relax and I do my thing. And it seems to be helping me be less stressed.
Yeah, she goes, sits on the floor in front of her little village that she bought, pretending that she's part of it.
Why are you telling people that?
Because it's what you do.
I should never have said that to you. I should never have told you that that's what I do.
So if we haven't mentioned, we went out and pretty much bought a village.
It's a whole village. It didn't start out that way.
No.
So I had mentioned that I always wanted a Christmas village, but I'd never found one that I particularly liked.
And what'd your husband do?
He made me go by a church and a post office and an Adirondack lodge from a Christmas village. And we brought it home and we put it on top of the little buffet in the sitting room. And then for whatever reason, well, I know what the reason is. My husband likes to go overboard on things, which is, works out in my favor quite a bit.
Well, if you're going to do it, go all out.
Right. So we went back to Walmart, and next thing I knew, I had 8 buildings and trees and lampposts and 20 different figures. And so I have an entire village. And yes, I have been known in the last couple weeks to literally sit on the floor, and because we put it in our big, huge window seat that we have. So I'm eye level with it. And I just, daydream for a couple minutes about how cool it would be to actually be walking those streets. And because it's just cozy and nice.
It is really nice. Once it's all lit up with the street lamps and everything, it's gorgeous.
Yeah. So that's what he was talking about.
Well, that's pretty much what we did when Beth was off from work.
Right. Sat in front of my Victorian Christmas village.
Yep.
On the floor.
Well, at least you're enjoying it, because really, you only get to enjoy it for 1 month.
Right.
Out of the year.
Right.
So might as well get the most of it.
Exactly.
We've got a pretty good episode for you all tonight. I know Beth is going to be talking about Princess Caraboo.
I am. And you're going to be talking about something.
Hy-Brasil.
That's right. Hy-Brasil Island.
Yeah.
A mysterious island.
It's really, really cool.
Yeah.
I can't wait to get to my story.
All right. Well, I'll start mine so that you can hurry up and get to yours.
All righty. Sit back, get comfy, and Beth is going to tell you all about Princess Caraboo.
So, April 3rd, 1817, started off like any other day in Almonbury, England, a town not far from Bristol. Shopkeepers peddled their wares, women did their shopping, and children played in the streets. But soon, people began to notice the young stranger wandering aimlessly down the street because she was very pretty and quite exotic looking. She was fairly young, in her early 20s, and dressed in a long black skirt, red and black shawl, and a black turban on her head. She carried a small bundle under her arm, which was later found to hold bars of soap and a few coins. She also seemed to be lost, because as she wandered down the street, she continuously talked to herself in a foreign language that no one recognized. And she also appeared utterly exhausted, as if she'd just survived some sort of terrible journey. But then the young woman approached one of the cottages, which happened to belong to the town cobbler, and she knocked on the door. The cobbler answered and stood in confusion as the beautiful stranger spoke in what he thought was gibberish and made motions with her hands.
God, that sounds an awful lot like me. I wander around talking to myself, and sometimes you can't understand me. It sounds like gibberish, you say.
Well, at least you're not knocking on strangers' doors.
Not yet.
No, I'll run after you and kind of guide you back home when that happens.
Probably have to get like a dog tag to go around my neck.
If found, please return him.
Yeah. As long as you get the right address, you don't send me somewhere else.
Oh. Eventually, the cobbler realized that the young woman was asking for food, and taking pity on her, he invited her inside. According to the historypress.co.uk, the cobbler gave the young woman some bread and milk. And when she mimed that she would like to sleep, he considered letting her until his wife stepped in and said absolutely not. So instead, the cobbler brought the stranger to Mr. Hill, the town's overseer of the poor. It was his job to bring any beggars to the justice of the peace before committing them to the poorhouse. But Mr. Hill had his doubts that this woman was just a vagrant. Something about her made him wonder if she was perhaps someone important. Or worse, she could be some sort of spy. So rather than bring her to the justice of the peace, he carted her off to the home of Samuel Worrell, the town magistrate. Worrell and his wife, Elizabeth, lived in a fine house named Knoll Park, and they also had a butler from Greece. Mr. Hill wondered if perhaps their butler would understand the woman's language. Maybe she was speaking Greek. But the butler had no clue what she was saying. Totally perplexed, they decided to send the woman to nearby Bristol, where there were sailors from all over the world. The mayor of Bristol tried to help her, but he was just as baffled as everyone else. Not knowing what else to do, he brought her to the local hospital for vagrants. But once she was there, the woman caused such a problem that they had no choice but to let her go. Now, you know me, and when I read a sentence like that on numerous websites that she caused such a problem that they had to kick her out, I want to know what she did, right? Like, what was she doing? It's a mystery. I could not find any details about exactly what she was doing to get herself kicked out. But at that point, Elizabeth Worrell stepped in. She really was a very kind woman, and she had the stranger brought back to Almondbury, where she put her up in the local pub called The Bull. And according to mentalfloss.com, this is when things seem to get even more strange. The woman refused to eat the meal that was brought for her. She would only drink tea, but only after washing the cup out by hand herself before she'd let them pour the tea into it. And when it was time to go to bed, she wouldn't get into the bed that was ready for her. Instead, she insisted on sleeping on the floor. She also had strange scars on her head that no one had noticed before. But when she saw a print of a pineapple hanging on the wall, the locals got their first hint of where she might be from, since she repeatedly pointed at it and said nanas over and over, which turned out to be the Indonesian word for pineapple. Now, utterly convinced that the woman truly was someone important, Elizabeth Worrell invited the stranger back to Knoll House. Over the next few days, the woman showed a keen interest in Chinese imagery, and she would go up on the roof to pray to Allah Ta'ala. She would drink tea, but she wouldn't eat anything but vegetables. She continued to sleep on the floor. But she was also an accomplished archer, and she was quite good at fencing, allegedly dipping the tip of her fencing sword in poison.
Oh, my. I wouldn't dip my tip in poison.
Well, where was she getting this poison? I mean, was she mixing it up herself? I don't know.
Quite possibly.
Her hands, which were very soft, didn't seem to show any signs of having lived a rough life. After a bit, the Worrells realized that when the woman kept pointing to herself and saying the same word over and over, she was trying to tell them her name, Caraboo. 10 days went by, which I can only assume caused some tension between Mr. and Mrs. Worrell. Samuel firmly believed that Caraboo was a vagrant and a beggar. Mrs. Worrell believed that Caraboo just might be royalty from a far-off land. And then, according to Mental Floss, Manuel Inesso stepped in. Inesso was a Portuguese sailor who had docked in Bristol and had heard about the exotic foreigner at Knoll House. The Worrells brought Caraboo to Mr. Worrell's office so the sailor could meet with her. He, unlike everyone else so far, understood Caraboo perfectly, and he said the language that she was speaking was a mixture of languages from Sumatra. But amazingly, Mrs. Worrell had been right all along. According to Caraboo, she really was royalty. She was actually Princess Caraboo of Hy-Brasil.
Oh boy, that's the upper hand. I bet she didn't let him live that down.
Mr. Worrell?
Yeah.
I know. I told you so.
I can see it.
As Inesso translated, it became obvious that the princess had suffered greatly. First, she had been kidnapped from her island in the Indian Ocean by pirates and held captive on their ship for many weeks. This was when she had gotten the odd scars on her head. Somehow, she had managed to escape and jump overboard while in the English Channel. She had swam to the shore and wandered the countryside, hungry and destitute, for 6 weeks, before she found herself in Almondbury. Mrs. Worrell hung on every word.
Well, it's an incredible story.
I know. Kidnapped by pirates. Mr. Worrell, who was a bit more practical, asked Princess Caraboo to write down her alphabet, which he had sent off to Oxford for analysis. For the next 10 weeks, Mrs. Worrell did everything she could to treat her royal guest with the utmost respect and dignity. According to allthat'sinteresting.com, she threw lavish parties for her. The princess willingly performed Indonesian dances for visiting magistrates. The city of Bath threw a ball in her honor. And she sat for a portrait painted by Bristol artist Edward Bird. Bird painted mostly historical scenes, and Princess Caraboo's portrait is one of only 2 portraits he ever painted. With her dark hair tucked under a white turban and her body draped in gold fabric, she really does look like an Indonesian princess. The portrait now hangs in the Bristol City Museum. But what Princess Caraboo was really known for during that time was for swimming completely nude in the lake. An
Nice.
event.
Wow.
An event that totally scandalized everybody.
I can imagine.
Yeah. 1817? Yeah. But mostly, people were dazzled by the foreign princess and beyond glad to have royalty living among them. The newspapers had a field day describing all of the galas and events held in her honor. And when Mrs. Neal, a boarding house owner in Bristol, read one of the articles in the Bristol Journal, It made quite the impression on her, but not because she was dazzled by the story. No, it was quite the opposite. Mrs. Neal was pretty sure that Princess Caraboo was someone else entirely, a woman named Mary Baker. Mary Baker was born in Devon in 1791 to a cobbler, which I found interesting, because whose cottage door did she knock on in town?
A cobbler.
A cobbler's. She had some sort of falling out with her parents at a young age, and she left home, finding odd jobs here and there all across southern England. She wound up at Mrs. Neal's boarding house for a few months, where she created a fake language to entertain Mrs. Neal's children. She also used to pretend to be a foreigner while she begged on the streets, because she felt that it made people feel sorry for her, and they were more likely to help her out. She frequently wore a turban when she was out on the street. Mrs. Neal immediately contacted Elizabeth Worrell, who was skeptical, to say the least. But she decided to bring Princess Caraboo to Bristol under the pretense of having her portrait painted by Edward Bird. It was then, during the sitting for the portrait painting, that Mrs. Neal confronted her. And Princess Caraboo crumbled. Quickly.
Oh, no.
She admitted, through sobbing tears, almost immediately, in perfect English, that it was all a hoax. At the same time, according to the historypress.co.uk, Oxford got back to Mr. Worrell, saying the writing that Caraboo had done was pure gibberish, and that the strange scars on her head were from a poorly done wet cupping procedure at a poorhouse in London. Basically, wet cupping was when a person's head was cut and then covered in hot glasses to catch the blood. It was supposed to cure a, quote, overheated brain, end quote. Well, the newspapers had a field day again, but not quite in the way you'd expect. Instead of denouncing her and being angry, the public sentiment and the newspaper articles seemed to applaud her for her carefully constructed ruse. They seemed to admire her ability to pull off such a grand hoax, and for basically, tricking all of the rich people.
Well, this was her survival technique.
Yeah. She was
and it worked.
She was put up in a very fancy house for 10 weeks.
Right.
So, for example, one newspaper wrote, quote, they wrote it in a poetry style thing here. I admired thy Caraboo, such self-possession at command, the byplay great, the illusion grand. In truth was everything but true, end quote. Elizabeth Worrell, who had the most to be angry about, frankly, actually felt sorry for Mary Baker eventually, and she paid for her passage on a ship from Bristol to Philadelphia. And even during the ocean voyage, the newspapers continued to print fantastical tales about her. One which became so well known that people still believe it to this day is that while passing St. Helena, where Napoleon was exiled, the ship anchored so that Caraboo could row to the island to meet him. Not only did she meet Napoleon, he was so enamored by her claims that he begged her to marry him. She refused and continued on to America. Now, just to be clear, everybody, that never happened.
Napoleon of all people.
I know. Mary Baker lived in the U.S. for 7 years, in which she rode her notoriety for as long as she could. She traveled to New York, where she put on her own stage show about her hoax. Allegedly, it took that long, 7 years, for Americans to get tired of her story of how she managed to hoodwink an entire town and be treated like royalty for over 3 months. By 1824, she was back in England, and she tried her stage show out in London, but it didn't do very well. However, she did get married, and she moved back to Bristol, and she got a rather lucrative job selling leeches to the local hospital.
That would have been lucrative back then.
Yeah, she did very well for herself. She actually kept her leech selling job for over 30 years. Mary Baker died in 1864, and she was buried in an unmarked grave. She never explained to anyone why she decided to be Princess Caraboo in 1817. And as for Manuel Ineso, no one knows how or why he claimed to understand what Mary was saying, or if he even knew her. He could have been an accomplice all along, but no one knows.
Incredible.
It's a great story.
It really is. But I think I know why.
Yeah.
I mean, she needed a place to stay. She needed food in her stomach. And this was ingenious.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she got taken care of, like I said, for a long time.
She sounds like a remarkable woman.
Yeah. But I also find it interesting about her is that the second Mrs. Neal confronted her, like she didn't even try. The jig was up, you know?
Well, perhaps she had just had enough of it herself.
True.
And decided, I'm so glad this is over with.
Yeah.
But wonder why she decided to bathe nude in the lake.
I don't know. Maybe because she thought that would bring her more attention. I don't know.
Could be.
Maybe she was just really dirty and wanted to take a bath.
Could be.
I don't know.
And we'll leave you on that note. We'll be right back after this quick Who'da Thunk It.
Hey, did you know? 14 years ago, researchers in Siberia uncovered a rather unusual find. The perfectly preserved remains of a 14,000-year-old hybrid wolf-dog puppy, complete with fur and all its shiny and sharp canine teeth. But recently, they made an even more unusual discovery. In its stomach are the undigested remains of a woolly rhino. Yes, woolly rhinos potentially looked as funny as they sound. But the interesting thing is that woolly rhinos went extinct 14,000 years ago, indicating that this wolf puppy may have eaten one of the very last ones on Earth. Who'da thunk it?
All right, we are back from the break, and I'm going to tell all you fellow wanderers out there about my story tonight on Hy-Brasil. There's an island off the west coast of Ireland that sounds purely magical. It's shrouded in mist 365 days a year, rendering it invisible to all who might be looking for it. But for only one day every 7 years, the mist blows away, and the island reveals itself in all its rich, green, vibrant beauty, before vanishing back into the mist once again. Those who have actually been there claim that it's a green wonderland inhabited by fairies, a wizard in a castle, and thousands of friendly black rabbits. There is both gold and silver on the island, which has been given freely to anyone who visits there. Some even say it was the home of a highly advanced civilization. The island has many names: the Enchanted Island, the Isle of Blessed, Hy-Brasil, and O-Brasil, just to name a few. In fact, Saints Berend and Brendan referred to the island as the Promised Land in the 5th century. There are many stories about Hy-Brasil, with each one adding more details to its lore. But here's the thing. Beginning in 1325, Hy-Brasil was actually on maps, and it continued to be drawn on maps for the next 500 years, as more and more explorers claimed to have been there. But then, in 1872, Hy-Brasil made its last appearance on a map, supposedly ending the centuries-long debate of whether it truly existed or not. And yet, there are some experts who say it never really disappeared and is still there to this day. And to add to its mystery, Hy-Brasil is also tied to England's most famous UFO sighting. But I promise you all that I'll cover all of that and more in my story tonight about the island of Hy-Brasil. Most accounts put Hy-Brasil, a circular-shaped island with a river running across it from east to west, about 200 miles off the west coast of Ireland. According to AncientOrigins.com, it's believed to have gotten its name from Brazil, a Gaelic word meaning High King of the World. The first time it ever showed up on a map was in 1325, when cartographer Angelo Delclerc drew it and labeled it Brasil. 50 years later, it showed up on another map, not as just one island, but two, under the name Ilha de Brasil. In 1436, a Venetian mapmaker named Andrea Bianco labeled it as Sola de Brasil, and in 1480, Englishman John Jay Jr. decided he was going to go and find it. John Jay Jr. was a Bristol merchant who owned several ships. Now, there is some speculation that he helped fund explorer John Cabot's expeditions to the New World. But in July of 1480, he set out for Hy-Brasil. According to the Canadian Encyclopedia of History, on July 15, a ship, and of John Jay, the younger, of the burden of 80 tons, began a voyage from the King Road at Bristol to the island of Brasil, in the western part of Ireland, to traverse the seas. News came to Bristol on Monday, September 18th, that in the said ship, they sailed the seas for about 9 weeks, but were driven back by storms to a port in Ireland for the preservation of the ship and the sailors. A year later, 2 more ships left Bristol in search of Hy-Brasil, but they were also unsuccessful. However, in 1497, a Spanish diplomat named Pedro de Ayala reported to the Spanish monarchy that John Cabot claimed that someone from the Bristol expeditions did find the island. Fast forward to the 1600s, and Hy-Brasil was so well known that even poets were writing about it, like Irish novelist and playwright Gerald Griffin, who wrote, "On the ocean that hollows the rocks where ye dwell, a shadowy land has appeared, as they tell. Men thought it a region of sunshine and rest, and they called it Hy-Brasil, the island of the blessed. From year unto year, on the ocean's blue rim, the beautiful spectre showed lovely and dim. The golden clouds curtained the deep where it lay, and it looked like an Eden, away, far away."
Aw, how lovely.
Isn't that beautiful?
I know you're not a fan of poetry. I'm not a fan of rhyming poetry, but hey, you know, he got his point across.
That he did. According to IFLscience.com, one account from 1629 describes how several seamen had discovered the island. One of these men, a Captain Rich, tried to sail into the island's harbor, but as he did, the air suddenly filled with ill-timed mists, and he couldn't see where he was going. Then there's the story of Moreau O'Lee from 1668. O'Lee claimed that after arguing with his wife, he went for a walk. During his walk, he was kidnapped by two men who threw him onto a boat and took him to Hy-Brasil. They called it Hy-Brasil. While he was there, he was given a book, which he was told not to open for 7 years. O'Lee was on the island for a few days before his kidnappers put him back in the boat and brought him to Galloway. Not feeling quite himself, O'Lee stayed with a family friend. Exactly 7 years later, O'Lee opened the book, read it once, and suddenly had the ability to heal the sick, a power that he considered magical. Another version of the story has O'Lee as part of a fishing crew that stumbled upon Hy-Brasil by accident, mostly because it had never existed before, and then suddenly appeared before them. When they landed, an angry old man immediately confronted them, telling them that they had no business being there. The old man shoved the book at O'Lee, telling him not to open it for 7 years. Either way, the book really did exist, and was kept in the O'Lee family until 1837. It was sold to a bookshop in Dublin before ending up in a museum. Known as the Book of O'Lee's, it really is a 15th century medical text that includes 44 tables outlining all kinds of diseases, symptoms, and cures. And in 1674, there was an Irish sea captain named John Nesbitt, not to be confused with a Scottish religious rebel who was executed in 1685. Anyway, Captain Nesbitt and his crew were sailing from France back to Ireland when their ship was surrounded by a very thick fog. When it finally lifted, the men found themselves right next to an island that was covered in free-roaming horses, cattle, sheep, and thousands of black rabbits. Intrigued, Nesbitt sent a party of 4 men ashore. On the first day, they came upon an old stone castle that appeared to be totally abandoned. They camped on the beach that night, in view of their ship, and when they awoke the following morning, they were startled to see a very old man with 10 servants trailing behind him, who invited them to a feast. During the feast, the old man explained that the island was under a wizard's spell that made it invisible most of the time. This wizard lived in the castle and made it so that the island was only visible once every 7 years. The old man was very delighted that the sailors had arrived because that meant the spell was broken. He gave them gold and silver in gratitude and wished them safe passage back to Ireland. So it was easy to believe that fairies were using magic to protect their home. Not long after, an expedition led by Captain Alexander Johnson also claimed to have seen the island for himself. For the next 200 years, maps continued to include Hy-Brasil, off and on, with various sailors both saying that they had seen it for themselves and denying its existence, saying it was nothing but a myth. But then, according to All That's Interesting, antiquarian and archaeologist T.J. Westrop claimed to have seen the island not once, but 3 times in 1872. The third time, he had brought his mother, brother, and several friends along with him. He said it was a clear evening with a fine golden sunset, when just as the sun went down, a dark island suddenly appeared far out to sea, but not on the horizon. It had 2 hills, one wooded. Between these, from a low plain, rose towers and curls of smoke. My mother, brother, Ralph Hugh Westrop, and several friends saw it at the same time. 6 years later, in 1878, residents in Ballyconton, County Cork, claimed that an island suddenly appeared off the coast that had never been there before, and it vanished as mysteriously as it had appeared. In his book of Irish tales, author D.R. McAnally wrote, "The men of the town and island of Ballycotton were fishermen and knew the sea as well as they knew the land. The day before, they had been out in their boats and sailed on the spot where the strange island now appeared. The day was clear, and the island could be seen as plainly. It was rugged in some parts, rocky in others, densely wooded. Here and there were deep shadows in its sides, indicating glens heavily covered with undergrowth and grasses." Interestingly enough, Hy-Brasil made its very last appearance on a map in 1873, but it remained part of Irish folklore and myth. And then in 1980, Hy-Brasil found itself tied to England's most famous UFO encounter, the Rendlesham Forest Incident. The Rendlesham Forest Incident deserves an episode all its own, so I won't go into a ton of detail on it. But basically, there was a prolonged UFO incident outside the U.S. military base. Sergeant Jim Pennington claimed that when he touched the craft, he received 16 pages of binary code telepathically, which he was able to write down. This code was said to list coordinates of ancient sites throughout the world, including the pyramids of Giza and the Nazca lines. But it also included the coordinates for Hy-Brasil, mapped by ancient cartographers. Over the years, there have been several explanations for the sightings of Hy-Brasil, including mistaken identity and plain old imagination and invention. It's no secret that early mapmakers put all kinds of things on maps just because they were told a place might exist. Some experts believe that Hy-Brasil is really Porcupine Bank, an island about 120 miles off the coast of Ireland that has sunken over time due to weather and rising sea levels. Its highest point is still 656 feet below sea level, and some experts argue that it may have only been seen during periods of extremely low tide. It also matches up with an 1830 map depicting Hy-Brasil, exactly where Porcupine Bank was discovered in 1862. So perhaps Hy-Brasil can be explained, or perhaps it's a truly mythical island where fairies, wizards, and happy black rabbits still roam till this day.
I love the hordes of black rabbits that are said to live on this island.
It sounds like a cool place.
It does. Wizards and castles and fairies shrouding it in mist and gold and silver for anybody who visits. It sounds lovely.
Yeah. Kind of makes you want to get a sailboat and make your way to Hy-Brasil.
I know. You just
One
have
day
to.
a year.
I was going to say you have to time it just right so you hit the day that, is exactly 7 years before it was last seen. That's very cool. It's true, though, that people used to throw all kinds of things on maps. I mean, think about all the maps that had, krakens and giant sea creatures and stuff drawn in the margins.
Well,
you know?
Yeah.
It's kind of the same idea.
Yeah, it truly is.
And it's interesting that just out of pure coincidence, both of our stories are somewhat tied to Bristol in a way, although Bristol was a huge seaport, so I would expect there to be explorers that would leave from there.
Well, I had fairies, wizards, and black rabbits. You had a naked girl swimming in the lake.
This is true. If you want to compare apples to oranges.
Yeah. Well, there you have it, everyone.
There you have it. A hoax in a mystical island.
Supposedly. And if you'd like to know more, as always, check out our show notes.
Yes, that's where all of our sources are, where you can do lots of more reading on your own if you're so inclined.
Well, that about wraps it up for this episode. We'd like to thank all you fellow wanderers out there for your continued support and listening to us. And join us again next week for an all-new episode of Where Our Minds Wander.
See you then. Thank you for joining us. We look forward to traveling with you again to the places where our minds wander.
If you like what you heard, please take a moment and provide us with a 5-star rating and a comment on your favorite listening platform. It really helps us move up the list and become more visible on the podcast charts so new people can find us.
And thank you all for your continued support.
See you next week for an all-new episode.